We are a part of the Mental Health News Radio Network.
You've tuned in to Rescue the Rescuer, the show that focuses on helping first responders who may be experiencing challenges such as addiction, PTSD, relationship failure, and more. We use stories of struggle and recovery to highlight successful survival strategies for those in this powerfully stressful field of work. And now, here's your host, Steven Kavalkovich.
Hey everyone, this is Steven. Thanks for joining me on the show. I'm a former paramedic in long-term recovery from addiction and post-traumatic stress disorder. I've created this podcast to help others who may be experiencing a story similar to mine find a path beyond their problems and towards a life that they deserve. Before we get started with today's episode, let's hear this short message from one of my supporters. I recently read an article that said 81% of Americans would like to become a published author. Chances are you might be one of them, right? I know I am. So what's stopping us? Writing and publishing a book takes a lot of work, can be a pain, and is expensive too, right? Not anymore. For my next book project, I've teamed up with Hassle-Free Books. They're making it easy for me to become an author. They're removing a lot of the fuss and struggle and making it smooth and simple. And it's far more affordable than you could ever imagine. Go to HassleFreeBooks.com and use promo code RESCUE to receive a 10% discount off any book project. Get started right away and become a published author in as little as 45 days. That's HassleFreeBooks.com. Promo code RESCUE. All right, thanks again for joining me, and let's get started with today's show. Welcome back, everybody, to the Rescue the Rescuer show. I am live at the Code EMS conference up in the Poconos in northeastern Pennsylvania today, and I'm sitting here with a very special guest. She's the clinical coordinator of the Critical Incident Stress Management team up here. Her name's Joanne Krug, and she's been involved for a very long time. She's got a lot of experience, and I'm just really excited to talk to her and pick her brain for a few minutes and bring you guys some valuable information about what a critical incident stress management team does and how valuable they are to helping our first responders and their families as well. So, Joanne, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here. So why don't you, if we were in an elevator and I was asking you what a CISM was or what it was about, why don't you give me like a elevator pitch as to what it is?
Okay. Critical Incident Stress Management team responds to providers, first responders, who have experienced a critical incident. And a critical incident is something that kind of overwhelms their normal coping capacities. And there are some kinds of incidents that are usually universally critical incidents for first responders. Anytime there's a death or serious injury of a child, for example, a line of duty death, or suicide of a colleague, or even managing a suicide, even if it isn't a colleague. So we have the mass casualty incidents are often critical incidents.
So would you say, I mean, this is something that I've always kind of been of the understanding in my own life, as far as trauma goes, I mean, there really isn't, like, you can't define it for somebody else. Like, it's kind of like an individual thing. Like, one thing that could be traumatic to you
Correct.
may not be for somebody else, right?
Right.
But as far as being in this team, is it a voluntary organization?
We're all volunteers.
Wow.
All volunteers, and we started back in 1988.
Wow.
So next year will be our 30th anniversary.
Now, I know you had told me before, but just to give the listeners an idea, this is an international organization, correct? So are they CISM International? What would they be called?
It's ICISF, International Critical Incident Stress Foundation.
Okay.
And their headquarters is in Ellicott City, Maryland.
In Maryland, okay.
CISM was really started by Jeff Mitchell, who was a Baltimore firefighter who was noticing that there were firefighters that were dropping out of service because they were affected by the work that they were doing. And so, as part of his graduate work, he put together a series of interventions that would help folks recover from critical incidents so they didn't drop out of service.
Wow, that's really... So
group interventions and as well as individual interventions.
Now, did he start this? He started this in 1988, or was this around?
He started that in the late 70s.
Okay, so it's been around since then, but your group started.
Our group started, right.
What made you decide to get involved with it? Because you've been with it since the beginning, right?
Right.
What made you decide to do it?
A small group of us got together and saw that there was a need in the Lehigh Valley and beyond our 6-county area for this kind of work. And so we then took ourselves to Baltimore to get trained by Jeff himself. Okay. And then came back and started the team.
So take me through something like, so an incident happens. Let's just say, unfortunately, let's just say there's a line of duty death. Mm-hmm. What happens? How does it go? We
have a hotline that is run through the MedCom. And so anybody who out in the field, an individual or a captain, a leader, administration of a group can call the hotline and give information and request services. Our services are free.
So, and then you guys will get contacted.
Yes, and we have a series of on-call. Every member of the team takes a period of on-call. Okay. And we have first and secondary, and sometimes we have 3 people on call. And they get information from the requester, and then they set up a program. They do an assessment, and they set up the appropriate program, and then pull together team members that are specifically appropriate for that program. If we're doing a predominantly police incident, we definitely want police on our team because police talk to police. There's easy identification. If it's predominantly a fire incident, then we definitely want firemen on our team. But everybody is trained in the same way, so we can plug in wherever we need to.
Okay. So you guys, for instance, would show up to like a police station or a firehouse or something like that?
Sometimes it's a community center. Sometimes it's a church. We need private space.
Okay, right.
Because our services are confidential. And that's, for the last, I think, 7 or so years, that's legislatively guaranteed in Pennsylvania.
So that's essentially pretty much like the doctor-patient privilege.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, confidentiality.
I mean, I know we had talked about it prior to doing this interview, and I was excited to hear that. Right. Because I know when it comes to being vulnerable and divulging certain personal issues or whatever, there is that certain fear of retaliation or criticism.
Or legal.
Yeah, or legal.
Accountability. And we do not do operational critiques. We make it very clear that this program is for the well-being, psychological and physical well-being of the individuals. It's not an operations critique. So if it goes in that direction, if some of the participants kind of lead us in the direction of an operational critique, we remind them that this is not the place for an operational critique. Okay. This is for them. This is for them to begin to process the emotional impact of what happened to them or what they experienced during this incident.
So when you have an incident and when you're activated, generally you've been doing this, since it began, so almost 30 years. So you've seen a lot and you've heard a lot.
Right.
What would you say is one of the biggest challenges to what you're doing, if there is one?
The challenge, I think, is to let everybody in our area know about the service. And we have a program, a pre-incident program that we do. It's a PowerPoint. We have one specially for police. We have one specially for dispatchers. And then we have a general one that we will do to any training in any squad, any firehouse, any police department, anywhere in our area, to give them information about the team, that we are available, and how to contact us, and when to contact us.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
So just getting awareness of our existence and the help that we have to offer is a major problem.
Now, you said something that I think for me, especially since I started the show and interviewing with people all over the place, I think out of those that work as first responders, I believe that dispatchers tend to be the most forgotten ones.
And coroners.
And you said coroners earlier, which totally shocked me. I didn't even think about. I mean, there you go. I didn't even think about it.
Right. Well, dispatchers are essential to the operation, a successful operation of a call-out. But they're not on the scene in person. And what they do is, in their minds, they imagine what's going on. Mm-hmm. And or they have not enough information to satisfy and get some sense of closure and completeness. But they're responsible for not only managing and getting all the equipment and the people there to do the job, but also notifying ancillary services like DEP,
right?
The power companies.
Yeah, I never thought about all of that.
So they're really key to the whole the successful operation on the streets, but they're not on the streets.
I've never been a dispatcher, but I've known many, and I would think that there's a really strong sense of powerlessness that comes because you're there taking a call, listening to whatever you're listening to. And
you're often talking to people in distress.
Yeah.
Who may not have English as a first language or even a second language.
Or be hard of hearing or,
right,
you know.
Right. So just to find out where the incident is sometimes a challenge for the dispatchers. Although with the CAD systems, it's better.
A little bit better, yeah. But there's so many challenges, and obviously, what your ultimate goal is the well-being of providers.
Yes.
And have you seen, since you started getting involved in this team, up until now, have you seen a dramatic increase in awareness and eye-opening and breaking of a stigma when it comes to mental wellness issues?
You're right. There's still are pockets of where stigma is an issue, but I've been really pleased at some of the progress made in being open to these kinds of interventions and the importance of these kinds of interventions to keeping a healthy workforce. I think we've garnered some excellent support from police departments, for example. Mm-hmm. And when we first began 30 years ago, there was a great deal of resistance, especially in the law enforcement. But there have been some departments that have really opened doors for us, and I'm very grateful. And we have members of their departments on our team.
Wow. Now, are these, I mean, obviously I wouldn't ask you which departments, but are these departments that have experienced some kind of major incidents? Mm-hmm. And is that usually the catalyst to this? Yes,
it was certainly the catalyst for the first police officer that became a member of our team. He had a critical incident, and we provided services for him, and he was hooked. He was convinced that this was important, and he wanted to be a part of it. And so he really kind of was our first police officer. Up to that point, we were using police officers from other CISM teams.
Oh, I see.
We had police incidents, and we had no police officers, and it was really important to have police officers. And so we borrowed them from Lancaster County at one point, and from the Harrisburg area at another point.
So just now because you want to have somebody to be able to speak that language.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And have an easy identification.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. They say that pain shared is pain lessened. How would you feel if you had someone to unload your burdens with? Someone who has probably felt how you feel and been in your shoes. Someone who wants to help you to manifest dramatic and lasting change in your life. Not only do I host this show and speak around the country, I also do individual coaching and mentoring. I want to help you to climb out of the hole of isolation, despair, and hardship. Contact me at rescuetherescuer.com to set up your free, no-obligation consultation. I'm confident that together we can develop a plan that is tailor-made to you and your goals and purpose. Now, mean, I would say, and I was talking to somebody about it this morning about, I think maybe just generally as society, but since we're talking about this audience and these as first responder people, we're very reactionary. Like, a lot of times something doesn't change or something doesn't happen until something happens. You know, like you said, talking about the one police, it took an incident to create a change. Right. And what do you think the answer is? Is it prevention? Is it being proactive versus reactive?
I love for it to be proactive, and that's why we have the pre-incident education programs. And when we do the pre-incident, we not only tell about what we do and the interventions we do, we teach stress management during that pre-incident education program. And so we teach folks how to take care of themselves and each other in that group. And in some ways, they can handle more incidents themselves in the group.
That makes sense.
So, because they're using good stress management. But then there are times that the incident is overpowering
and everybody
for their
takes
existing coping mechanisms, and then we get a call.
Now, as far as the stress management, can you give me a couple examples of some of the things that you do for that? Like, what are some interventions?
Your basics, like watch your eating, in terms of try to go light on the sugars and the caffeines kind of stuff, because
which is tough for shift work and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, they have notoriously, first responders have notoriously poor diets, kind of thing, and heavy on caffeine. So
nicotine.
Just watch that and watch the alcohol consumption, because that's one of the ways that people cope. Is to have a drink or more and more and more. And that becomes a problem too. So watch that. Get adequate sleep, get some exercise, get back to a normal routine, talk to people that you trust. Those could be your coworkers, those could be your family. And by the way, we include families of first responders in our
That's what I was going to ask you.
Services, yes.
Because you recognize that it doesn't just affect the first responder.
Absolutely.
I mean, we know that the relationship failure and divorce rate amongst first responders is probably the highest amongst any career. I mean, is it any wonder? You know, we're really, really good at taking care of strangers, not so good about taking care of ourselves or those closest to us.
And that's what we want to just kind of build that awareness so that you can take better care of yourself, and that your family is included in and knows some things to do to try to help you through a critical incident.
Right. Yeah. So basically, it sounds like, I'm going back to grade school now. Maslow's basic needs.
Absolutely. Yes.
Having your basic needs met and connection with others is pretty much like the ticket out of a lot of this.
Yep. That's where we start. I mean, it's really hard to be talking about interventions and what you should do and process this incident if your basic needs aren't met. Mm-hmm. So if you're hungry or you're cold or you're
tired, you're lonely, whatever.
You're tired and your basic needs aren't met, that's not the time to do cognitive processing. And so the intervention psychological first aid has come into use now. Our team does that, and the Red Cross does that, and most of the folks responding to disaster are trained in psychological first aid as well, which is simply providing for physical needs and mental needs, medical needs, and just if you can't provide for that, you hook them up with somebody who can. And we're just operating at basic needs level when you're doing psychological first aid.
Right, but it's so important. I mean, at this convention this morning, I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people about fitness for duty. And we could get onto another tangent when it comes to physical fitness for duty, because a lot of providers aren't physically prepared, because of poor eating habits and lack of exercise, et cetera. But that's neither here nor there. But when it comes to mental and psychological fitness for duty, it's rarely addressed.
And that's, I think, what some of the gains that we've made is that we're building an awareness that that's an important aspect of a healthy workforce.
You had said that you had worked as a first responder, as an EMT, I guess, for a while. Mm-hmm. So you know, and I know, and most of the listeners will probably know that whenever you take an exam in EMT or fire school or whatever, the very first answer you have to have is scene safety, body substance isolation. So physical safety, nothing's ever mentioned about mental health or awareness. And I don't know. I mean, I'm passionate as heck about it because I see it as being, you have to have that part.
Well, oftentimes the psychological response is delayed. You are on automatic pilot, and that's why we train. And when we get to a scene, we're super focused on doing our jobs at the scene. And those emotional responses to whatever you're doing and whoever you're treating and whatever suffering you're seeing, that comes later, usually.
Because of the adrenaline in the moment.
And the training. You train over and over and over again. Repetition is a good thing in training. And so you can ignore those other things until you're off duty, you're offline, you're away from the scene, and then the impact may hit you.
Well, I spoke to a trauma therapist recently about this, how one of the things she recommends when she does the trainings with fire departments, et cetera, that when somebody's shift is over, go home and sleep. Like, go home and rest. Like, don't. If you can. But
because that's another symptom of stress is sleep disruption.
Yeah. Because you know, if you're working the night shift or whatever, your shifts are changing from days to nights, and
which is terrible on your body.
It's insane, right?
Yeah.
But that's the culture.
Right.
But again, that's something that probably globally should be looked at. We know that there's more studies coming out regularly about the sleep deprivation and what it's causing, and it's causing accidents and medication errors and all kinds of things.
Well, those are the big responses, but I think that pain is one, and sleep deprivation are two things that make anything else that you do harder.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes
anything. Just daily activities are harder if you're sleep deprived or if you're in pain.
It makes perfect sense. So we're going to wrap up because we've been talking for a little while now. I just want to ask, for someone who's spent a good majority of your life helping people achieve wellness, what is a message that you can give to the audience, that everybody out there that's going to hear this?
Self-awareness. Build in self-awareness. Have a good support group. That if you don't see it, if you don't recognize it in yourself, they're good enough friends that they will call you on it. Mm-hmm. And then seek help.
Yeah, and to caveat that too, add on to that, there's people will call you on it, and maybe even if that's your superiors, but not punitively.
No, out of caring.
Yeah, out of caring. I wasn't saying you were saying that, but no. I'm just thinking, like,
out of caring.
When someone calls you out, sometimes there could be that negative connotation, but because we care and we want to see you at your best,
well, it's a mini intervention by saying, like, I'm worried about you.
Yeah.
I've been noticing this, and this.
Yeah. I'm not picking on you. I'm worried.
Right. Yeah, I'm concerned about you. Are you aware that this is what you're showing lately and what's going on? Ask the questions. Well, as a friend.
And a lot of times I know that when we're struggling, a lot of times we're the last person to know that everybody else knew, because, and this is another conversation for another time, but when it comes to like the fear of somebody speaking up because they don't know how to help or they feel like they don't want to get involved. These are our people. These are our coworkers. These are our family. We spend more time with these people than we do with our blood family. Sometimes we need to take the word brotherhood and actually mean it by looking out for each other.
Looking out for each other, and CISM is a reach out that you can do. But sometimes the issues that are presented are beyond CISM, beyond that crisis intervention, and we have a good network of mental health professionals that we can refer to that understand first responders. There are some of my colleagues that are excellent therapists, but they don't understand They don't understand first responders, and so that would not be a good match.
Right.
So we have, over the years, developed a cadre of therapists, mental health professionals, who get it. And those are the referrals that we make as necessary. And in our training, one of the things that I really emphasize in training the team is that self-awareness. And if you have gone out on too many programs and it begins to affect you, I need you to be aware of that. I need you to say no. Mm-hmm. It's okay to say no. I've had too much. Or no, that call is too similar to one that I'm still struggling with myself. And so it's okay to say no. We also have a program called Post-Action Staff Support that after an intervention, after a group intervention, for example, where the team is traumatized by the intense material that they have heard. There's secondary traumatization. So we have a way any team member or a group of members can talk with that team and do an intervention with them to kind of help them clear.
So it's help for the helper's helper.
Yep.
Essentially.
And it used to be called debriefing the debriefers, but Jeff Mitchell didn't like that term, so it now becomes post-action staff support.
Makes sense. I mean, It sounds like you guys got all the bases covered. And, one last thing I'll say is when I was in my struggles a while back, I had a therapist and I was a first responder and I have a therapist and she'd ask what's going on. I tell her about a call and she's on the floor crying. Doesn't work. It doesn't work. And that's not her fault. It's just, you got to find somebody who gets it.
And expects that this is the kind of thing that
this is what you're bringing to the table.
This person brings us to the table because that's the kind of work he does.
That's what they do.
And so,
Wow. Joanne, it's been I'm so glad you took some time away from your table today to join me. I'm really excited to get this message out. I know I'm happy to know that this is an international thing. So
there's several hundred teams throughout the United States. ICISF has a list of teams.
Okay, good.
Right. So you can go on their website and find a team.
Is it ICS.org or?
It's ICISF.org.
Okay.
International Critical Incident Stress Foundation.org is their website, and they have a list of trainings. They have a list of, they have conferences, and they have a list of all the CISM teams throughout the United States and Canada, Australia, Germany, Israel.
Wow, that's
worldwide.
Well, I'm going to make sure that we get the website up on the show notes for the show. That way people can find teams in their area or join teams in their area, because I know there's never going to be a lack of needing team members, I'm sure.
Right.
So, Joanne, thanks again for joining me today. This has been another awesome episode of Rescue the Rescuer. We'll see you next week. Hey everyone, thanks again for listening. I really hope it'll help you or your loved one. If you get a chance, I really would appreciate it if you could head over to iTunes and Apple Podcasts and leave a review. It will really help me out in many ways. Take care everyone, and remember, you are not alone in your struggle.
I want to give a big shout out to one of our supporters, the Addictions Academy. The Addictions Academy is the world's foremost accredited trainer of addiction coaches, addiction counselors, interventionists, and international master addiction coaches, offering on-site training at your rehab or facility, live virtual classroom webinars, or on-demand classes covering an extensive availability of courses and certifications. Check them out at theaddictionsacademy.com or call Dr. Callie Estes and her team at 1-800-706-0318. Thanks for listening to Rescue the Rescuer. For show notes and more, head on over to rescuetherescuer.com.
We are a part of the mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com. This show is produced by James Healy of RecoveryInnovators.com. If you have a message and want to start a show of your own, contact him and let him know that we sent you.